now. It's the Finding Your Spine podcast with host Chase Spears.
We were being forced by the state to have teachers stay home if they were exposed to children who were positive for COVID. So these teachers or staff members might have been forced to stay home for 10 or 5 days. It later was switched to constantly, right? And we now know there was no need, there was no need for that. But at the time, the school, a couple months before I was elected, they decided that they were no longer going to pay for those days that the employees had to stay home unless they had the vaccine.
Welcome back to Finding Your Spine, a podcast where we call morally principled men and women to step out of the shadows, and we challenge them to put the truth to work in their lives, leadership, and workplaces. I'm Chase Spears, and I'm joined today by my friend Amy Cawvey. Amy is sort of a local hero, if I might say so, or at least to me. She's an elected board member on the USD 469 school board in Lansing, Kansas, the small city in northeast Kansas where we both live, is also currently a candidate for re-election. She is also the Republican precinct woman for the city ward that we both live in. She's also involved as a Kansas State liaison with Moms for America. Amy has served in so many places, helping young children as they're coming through their school years. She's worked with Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. She has helped with soccer leagues. She's been a softball coach, a volunteer sailing instructor. I presume that did not happen in Kansas.
No, we had to do some hard time in Hawaii for about almost 7 years.
Oh, so. Hard time indeed.
Yeah,
hard time indeed.
So I learned to sail and then became an instructor there, a volunteer instructor, as a morale program for military spouses.
That would be a morale program indeed.
Yeah.
I don't know. I grew up in Florida. I don't know how in the world I ended up in the geographic center of the United States. I think it's a bad joke God's playing on me some days. But yeah, you're married to Brian, military wife. Brian was in the Air Force for 31 years, so you traveled the world with him, raised 3 kids.
Yeah.
Right?
He actually retired after 26, but we've been married, let's see, 89, what is this? 35 years now. So yeah. But yeah, we traveled. We were married right before he left for basic training at 18 and 19 years old. So
I'll have to ask you in a minute because I know there is not Air Force in our part of the state. I gotta ask you in a minute. We'll come to that, how you got there. Amy is just a stalwart defender of the truth and freedom. Has stood up to the online mobs, to the in-person mobs, and that's why she is someone who encourages me so much. Just a tremendous story of someone with resolve, someone who will not be bullied, someone who will not be silenced. And I encourage you right now, go follow her on X. She is Blondie AC1, the conservative school board member in Lansing, Kansas, who will not be silenced. And I know she will have a lot to say in this discussion. So I'm really excited about digging in, Amy. Thanks for coming.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, because I don't even know a whole lot about your background. I'm a late convert to following your way. So who was the young girl who became this lioness?
I think I took after my dad a lot growing up. Couldn't really talk me out of things. Kind of headstrong. Didn't give up. Sometimes that was good. Sometimes that was bad. Depends who you were asking. But really just a typical, Midwestern. Spent part of my childhood in Ohio, part in Missouri. We didn't go to the same high school, but we were in the same area. And we met each other when we were 15 and 16. So married, high school sweetheart. And he joined the Air Force, and away we went. And 3 kids later, and 26 years after service, we retired and ended up in Fort Leavenworth. And I've been involved in a number of different jobs, part-time. It was important for me to be able someone to be home with the kids at all times. So a lot of times my positions were part-time, maybe after he would come home from work or volunteering. But I've just kind of done a variety, different positions in my life. A lot of them not paid for, my husband reminds me. And this is one of them. I need to start working on that.
I find there's no shortage of unpaid opportunities.
Exactly. So every time I end up stepping into another one, he asks me kind of jokingly, how much does that pay? And ooh. But yeah, and then, school board came around. I'd seen a lot of changes. my kids encompassed about 25 years, worth of education at the time I decided to run. And I could see the complete change in public education from the time our older children entered till where our youngest was at the point when I ran. And when COVID hit, everybody became even more interested because of the schools being shut down and online learning, and kind of opened up everyone's eyes to what was going on. And I felt like, at one point I was in the PTA maybe lobbying for new air conditioners for a building or something like that. But this was so much more important. So I started listening to school board meetings, seeing what I could do about it. I think everyone kind of took a look at their local government because they realized how much power they had over their daily lives, whether it was shutting down their restaurant or their business, or not allowing them to go to work, or forcing them to wear a mask, or forcing them to get a COVID shot. Whatever it was, I think we all kind of became aware of how critical that was. So a local representative, David French in Lansing, he talked to me about running for school board, and at first I said absolutely not. April Cromer, another strong woman who was his campaign manager back then, she encouraged me also. And the more listening I did to the local meetings, I knew I could at least do better than that. So I decided to run. But I decided I wanted to do it. I didn't want to try to just make everyone happy with my platform. I wanted to be honest, what I stood for, what I meant, and I came out as a conservative, and, my values and what I wanted to change, and that's when sort of all of the attention came with it, the negative attention.
Yeah, and you have drawn attention, and you were elected first. You ran in 2021. You were sworn in 2022. Yeah. So what was it like walking in to that very first meeting?
Sweet. No. It was fun. My biggest concern at that point was COVID. Scare was rearing its ugly head again. There was talks of some wanting to again shut down schools, bring and the masking, and maybe there was talk about forced vaccination, for kids to be able to attend school, things like that. So we just hit the door running. We decided to vote on new leadership for the board. That first meeting, that took them by surprise. We reinstated paid COVID leave because at the time we were being forced by the state to have teachers stay home if they were exposed to children who were positive for COVID. So these teachers or staff members might have been forced to stay home for 10 or 5 days. It later was switched to constantly, right? And we now know there was no need. There was no need for that. But at the time, the school, a couple months before I was elected, they decided that they were no longer going to pay for those days that the employees had to stay home unless they had the vaccine or shot that we know wasn't preventing anyone from spreading it.
They were singling them out.
Yes. So the very first meeting, we axed that policy, and that was gone, and put in retro pay for anyone who had been forced to take leave and chose not to get the shot, and so they could be paid. And we got rid of that the first day, so I was pretty happy about that. So it was a good meeting. That's
great. You probably didn't expect that it wouldn't take very long before, after you'd done this thing to help teachers actually get paid, that some of those teachers would actually kind of come out with sharpened knives for you. So you very quickly, you were telling me you were sworn in early 2022, and then in June, you ended up on a CNN podcast, and things changed.
They did. Yeah, and around that time, too, I had put forth a Parents' Bill of Rights policy around the same time. So it all kind of came together. Our governor had vetoed legislation that was passed by both houses both sides in the Senate and the House in the Kansas for a Parents' Bill of Rights, and Governor Kelly vetoed it. One of the things she said was it should be handled at a local level. That's something that politicians in Kansas and the Kansas Association of School Boards love to throw out when they don't want to do something. We want to leave it to local control. Unless it was masking or COVID shots, then they had to take control or closing the
they
schools.
They can find those opportunities for the mass rules.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when it comes to something they don't want to do, they like to throw that around. So I decided, okay, fine. So I looked at the Kansas Parents' Bill of Rights, and I looked at Florida's, and I looked at some others, combined them, wrote one for ourselves, and that was passed. We actually had union teachers show up. I mean, the head of the KNEA show up. We had the head of our local union organize stickers that said "Say No to Parents' Bill of Rights," things like that. So we had a very loud meeting, packed full of stomping their feet and asking me to resign and things like that. And then that kind of caught on. There was a few articles written about it, and then it caught on, and I was asked to do the CNN podcast and with another school board member out of Florida. So we tag teamed it, and I think we did pretty well. But it was very accusatory of, well, what are you trying to do?
And not long after that, you also got to go on Fox News and talk about what you're trying to do at the school board.
Yes,
yes.
yes.
And I gather that did not endear you any more fans among the people I would classify as useful idiots there in Lansing.
Exactly. Yeah, they did not think that was fair, that I was bringing outside politics and undue attention to Lansing. And, of course, this even started during the campaign when I first was on Fox. And, of course, one of my campaign opponents, he was not happy with that. It happened to be the day of one of our forums, the candidate forums. So he spent most of the forum bashing me, Fox News, and the 1776 Project PAC, who had endorsed me as one of their first candidates when they started their PAC. So I was speaking about that PAC and running for school board as a mom on Fox. So he kind of hit the trifecta, went after all of it, spent his whole time there. So, yeah, I started to get some hate emails and hate phone calls after that, and showed what tolerance some on the left have for us. Or lack of, I should say.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to go back and imagine showing up to a school board meeting with stickers saying "No to Parents' Bill of Rights." Yeah. The brazenness of people.
It wasn't good optics, I'll tell you that, for them. And apparently they don't have a very good understanding of the Constitution and a parent's right to direct, the upbringing and education of their children, because we work for them. We work for, I don't get paid, but I work for the parents. I work for the constituents. And it's all about the kids, but the parents are their first and most important teacher. And to say no to their rights, it was alarming.
It's this backwards philosophy and government, I won't even call it public, government education today, where the parent is almost this ancillary, inconvenient figure to the desire of the school, instead of the school being there to support and further enable the parent to provide a good education. And by education, we mean transfer of cultural knowledge and values from one generation to the next.
You're exactly right. And unfortunately, not all, but for some, I think that's purposeful, and they want to divide the family and divide the child from the parent, and it's extremely harmful. I found that my first year on, when I was made aware of, before the Parents' Bill of Rights, I was only on like a month or so when I was made aware of staff at our district intentionally keeping secrets from parents of children transitioning or trying to transition at school, at least socially. And they sent out an email to all of the staff saying that parent-teacher conferences were coming up. And if students were using different pronouns or names to start to socially transition at schools, that they needed to support that and keep those secrets from the parents. So when I found that out, I included that in the Parents' Bill of Rights, brought that to attention, put a stop to that. And there absolutely should never be any secrets kept from parents. And unfortunately, the more I talk to others, this is going on across our country in many schools. And later, I attended a conference with Alliance Defending Freedom, and I met two parents who the same thing had happened, where they were being socially transitioned. at their schools without the parents knowing. One parent ended up losing her daughter to suicide, and another an attempted suicide, and thankfully she's okay and doing really well now. But I'll never forget meeting those parents, and I won't back down to that ever, because there's nothing more important than the safety of the children, and to keep secrets from parents like that, it was horrific.
Well, it goes back. A lot of people say, public schools have just in recent years got to where they are trying to hide things from parents. But when you look at the words of John Dewey, who's really the father of modern public education, his own words were, "We are there to separate children from the values of their parents." And I know even Woodrow Wilson had similar thoughts when he was at Princeton University.
Yes.
I mean, so this is nothing new.
No, they've been playing the long game since the beginning of public ed. And that's exactly right. When you look at that history, they wanted to be able to indoctrinate the children and teach them what they wanted. And because it used to be before public education, there was pastors and churches and sometimes local doctors or families that was in charge of the education of children, but that wasn't part of their plan and why it was originally developed for public education.
So here you are, you come in, you get elected, you do something that should be of no controversy, a Parents' Bill of Rights, which is basically, hey, teachers, you have to talk to parents about what their kids are going through. I bet, before you came to this season of life, you probably never imagined that you would find yourself a figure viewed or treated as kind of an antagonist of the local school district. I mean, you had been a substitute teacher. You had been very heavily involved in your children's PTA over the years.
Yes.
I mean, you were by no means an outsider. If anything, you had, for the majority of your life, in some ways been a supporter of public education.
Always. I couldn't even count the hours spent as either a room mother or a volunteer or making copies and supporting, because I wanted to be involved and I wanted to be there where my kids were and know what was going on and help them always. So it is a different, now I'm accused of being things like a paid operative to destroy public education, or I'm,
take
working
that as a compliment.
secretly. Exactly. And I can't even keep track of all the people I'm supposed to be getting paid by, the Republican Party, the 1776 Project PAC, local elected officials. And I haven't received the checks yet, but apparently I'm on all of their payrolls and I have this higher agenda. And really, I just want to get back to basics, respect parental rights, have the kids get a good foundation. Because even if you pull your children out or you homeschool your children, which I absolutely support that, that too, homeschooling, private school, regardless, we're going to have children in public education. So we need to make this a good environment for them. My kids are out now. They're all graduated, moved on. I'm doing it for the kids that are still there and the parents.
I mean, this would be such an easy time of life to say,
Yeah, it'd be much less stressful.
I raised my kids. I've paid my dues. It's someone else's problem. But you don't let it be someone else's problem. Why is that? What inside you makes you keep going when I know so many people who once they reach a certain age, they're like, yeah, not my problem, not my problem.
It's the future of the country. The left has been in this for the long game. They've been changing education and, like you said, trying to use education for many, many years, well before how things have kind of hit the fan now. And we need to fight back. We need to step up. We need to have people involved from the church and faith, with the Christian worldview to run for these offices, for local offices, not just school board, but city council or anything like that, to have a say for our grandchildren, their children, our great-grandchildren, the future, and to keep this country that was founded on Christianity and founded on a belief in God. If we do not fight to keep our beliefs as part of, the education on how our country was founded, and we let others control that, the younger generation, they won't learn that. We've already seen things, been misconstrued in curriculum and the true founding of our country not being taught. So that's why I do it. It would be higher pay and less stressful if I did something else. But for the kids, for the future. And to aggravate a few people on the side. I'd maybe get a little bit out of that. But no.
There's a slight consolation prize with some of the characters involved.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
let's talk about that. From what I see now, it seems like you've developed a pretty thick skin, water off a duck's back. I see at least weekly people trying to come at you online, and it seems like you have fun with it now. But what was it like that first time? There had to be a, oh, what have I got myself into moment, like the first time you start getting attacked. I mean, here you are, you've been a relatively anonymous person, an Air Force wife, raising your children, being involved in the school, not being called bad names.
Yeah.
And now you've stepped up and you're trying to help something, and no good deed goes unpunished. And what was it like that first time?
It did upset me at first, because one of the laziest attacks that is often made is deeming you as a racist. It's hard to prove something that you're not, right? And I had never been called that, and I was most worried. I know that's what they do. I know those are the type of attacks they do. They're baseless. They're not founded. But when you throw those words out there and they get repeated enough, other people start repeating them, and then you're labeled, right? I knew that was part of the deal as running, but what I was worried about is that it might affect my daughter in school. And so I was worried about that. She was in high school, but she had a different view than me. She just asked me point blank, "Well, are you, Mom?" I was like, "Well, no, you know that." She's like, "Well, then don't worry about it." And she wasn't worried about it, so that's where I tried to leave it. But that's one of the most frustrating things, is when something's completely untrue and there's no way to really prove it. If they say you didn't vote a certain way, you can show them your voting record, right? But when it's just a blank, and that's why they use those attacks, because they know there's no really way to prove that they're not true.
Yeah, so. Anything with an ist or a phobe. You don't have to actually bring any of the receipts to it, and people are afraid of those words.
Yeah, they don't want to be labeled that. And they do that not only to attack me, I think. They do it to intimidate others from running. Yes. And that's why I think it's important to hang in there and keep doing what you're going to do, or what you plan to do, or to go ahead and run, take that, leap and to do something, because otherwise they win. And I've seen some on our board who I thought at least felt different initially cave to that pressure. Mm-hmm. They don't want to be attacked. They don't want to be called names on social media or stand up for what's right. They want to be popular. They want to make both sides happy, and you end up making nobody happy, and people can see through it. But if you're going to do this, you have to be really strong and not let that sway you. Yeah,
and it's there. We've seen it at so many school boards around the nation. We even have our friend Vanessa Reed, who they even did a recall petition on. Yeah. God bless her, she held firm. And,
she did.
They got nowhere near the signatures that they thought they were going to get. I remember a few years ago, there was a senior military commander in Europe, and he said, my job is basically to make 100,000 soldiers look like 1 million to the Russians, and the progressive ideologues who haunt these school meetings, they're very good at that.
Very good. Yeah, I have about 5 top fans, but they're very loud, and they spread it, all over social media to make it sound like everyone agrees with them. Yeah, and that's what they do. Just like what is done with bots on, something like X or whatever, to make it seem like more people have that opinion than do. But it's the same crowd.
Yeah, just making the noise.
And the union stokes it too. They like to be called an association, not a union. It's a union, but they like to stoke that. And I spoke to an attorney who's involved with school districts and school board associations. We happen to be talking about something else, but they're using Lansing as a real pinpoint for what not to let happen to your district and how to fight back and to prove their need, the union, is what I'm saying. Because if they're not needed to stick up against crazy people like myself, well, what are they there for, right? And they're becoming less popular as it is anyways, but they really try to drum that drama up. They like the drama because then they're more needed to the to the teachers they feel. So,
Which is a great just proof point of they're not there for the kids. They're not there for the school. They're there for themselves. And what's it like? I mean, these people they're well funded. They're well organized. They have a lot of political sway, a lot of power.
They do.
And they like to keep their gun sights trained on people like you. And you have felt that very personally. You feel it very personally.
Yeah.
I mean, what makes you continue to stand up and say, I'm not going anywhere. I could not care less. I'm not going anywhere.
Well, if you're receiving flack, you're over the target, right? Or so you're onto something. So you need to continue. And I just won't give in. I don't know. I just see other people who don't give in. Look what our president's been through. I mean, the man has been indicted, shot, attempted, assassinate. He's been through so much, and he just keeps going. Now, this is a minuscule level compared to something like that, but he's someone that you can look at, and he's made his money. He could just go and enjoy his time at Mar-a-Lago or wherever in the world he wants, but he just keeps fighting, and we each need to do that. We can't give in because that's what they want. It's the mob mentality, and it's the intimidation. We just can't do that. If we all do something little at a small level, it's amazing the pushback. Look at how DEI is crumbling across the country.
Isn't it great to watch?
Yeah. I mean, from advertisers to colleges to wherever. Now they're all, oh, okay, well, let's never mind about that, I
mean, 5 years ago, did you think you could get on then Twitter and say men are men and not get banned?
Exactly. You would have been canceled.
Yeah.
How dare you,
And how much ground we've made. I mean, there really is some momentum on the side of truth, but the other side is still clearly intent on not letting this die. So let me ask you, like, what is it that differentiates people, like you, who say, I'm not going anywhere, I don't care, and those who do crumble? Because we know a lot of them. We've seen a lot of them.
We've seen it happen.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think the difference is between those who have a spine and those who don't?
For me, it's my conscience. I just can't do that. I would feel dirty and greasy if I just gave in to make life easier for myself. I think being a mom and raising kids and going through the stresses that you do as a parent kind of hardens you and, makes it easier to just keep going and let things roll off. I've been through some things in my life that it's nothing extraordinary or that anybody else hasn't, as far as like losing your parent or seeing them deal with a difficult illness. So things like this, I just try to put it into perspective. Like I saw my mom battle ALS and she just passed away in 2023. So people that face things like that, something like this is nothing. So we just need to get off our, not be worried about people trying to intimidate us and attack us, and just get out there and stand up for what's right, because that's easy compared to stuff like that people face.
Yeah, I think there are some people who just have resolve. I think you're one of those people.
Yeah.
I think there are people who do not initially have it. They have a strong conscience, but they have to practice and they have to build their way up to it. I'll admit, that's me.
Yeah.
How do you counsel people who are like in my camp, but on the early stage of it, where I was years ago, to begin practicing it? Like, how do you train resolve?
Well, time's going to pass either way, so you can either, drudge through it and do what is right. You're going to be criticized either way too, if you remember that. You have to add some humor for those moments when you're feeling down. I know a few different times my husband would remind me when I'd come home late from meetings and so frustrated that sometimes I don't even want to talk about it. And one thing I try to remind myself is that a lot of these people attacking us think that men can have babies. And I mean, that sounds silly, but like if you think about it like that, like I'm never going to convince them that parents have a right to determine their children's education when they think a man can have a baby, right? So why am I even trying? So I try to keep my focus on the ones that are listening and and just keep forging my way through. you just can't listen to all the noise, I guess. And I'm not pretending it's like that every day. There's days that it's a lot easier than others. There's days where I want to quit or I want to resign because it would be easier. But then usually by the next day I get over it. And
Well, I've appreciated watching with the other side of you getting over it.
Yeah.
It's just every time I see you pop up, it puts a smile on my face because I'm like, this is like the model. Like, she doesn't back down, and it's not that you're mean or assertive.
I try to
or
be
loud,
somewhat polite.
right? I
but-
mean, but it's very clear. Like, she's not going to be moved. I'm sitting
Yeah.
there watching the trolls come in, and I'm like, y'all are wasting your time.
yeah.
She's not
They
going
keep
anywhere.
going. Yeah, I try not to use their tactics. They like to attack people for things, just like bully type things, like the way someone looks or the way that, whatever, just immature. It's disheartening when you see adults act like that, and the way that they attack people there's no substance to it, So I try to at least say that, but I have some fun with it too on the side. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not an angel like some of the comebacks I have, but I don't know. I try to keep it into perspective, but I won't back down to them either. Usually I try to reply at least once. I'm not going to keep arguing all day. And sometimes it goes a little longer. But I'm also not going to let them just put something out there and not reply to it. That is a tactic that some people use. But after a while, when those things get out there so often, they become accepted as truth.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know like during George Bush's administration between 2000 and 2008, whether you're a fan of him or you're not, there was a lot of attacks on him that he didn't go back. He didn't stand up back. I don't know why. I think he thought it was better to kind of take the higher road. He was called a racist, too, for Katrina. In one of his books, I think it was Decision Points, he talked about that was one of the most hurtful things when he was president. Because, again, that's something you can't prove that you're not really, that's not you. And, I mean, we could argue his policies. I didn't agree with all of his policies, and I don't now. But, as far as that, I don't think he's a racist. I don't think Katrina was a racist, the way he handled it. But when it's put out there that often, people start to believe that. So,
yeah, the incredibly powerful, the staying power that a narrative has, and there are times to not dignify with something with a response, but there are also times to come out and say, look, this is untrue.
Yeah.
This is a lie. This is libelous. Like, no.
And I think you have to do that. I don't know. Otherwise, they take advantage.
They do.
We're too nice sometimes.
Yeah.
We're polite. We're nice, but sometimes we just gotta get in there and fight.
There's a time and place for good Christian pietism.
Yeah.
But the imprecatory Psalms are also there for a reason.
That's right. There is a lot. There's quite a few that, some of them can get. They went a little farther than I'd probably go.
I was in my psalm reading yesterday. I forget which chapter and verse it was, but there was one David wrote, "Lord, my enemies knock their teeth out of their mouth." And
exactly.
There's a time and place to call on the Lord for some righteous anger.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would listen to Psalms at night going to sleep a lot. That's my favorite. So there's a lot in there that could it could get pretty crazy if I took that to heart.
It is. Yeah, there's this book I want to read at some point. I haven't got it yet because it's expensive. It's published by a university press, but it's called Cursing with God, and it's about the imprecatory Psalms. So, by the way, if the author of the book is out there, I would love to get an autographed copy. But one of these days I'm going to order it because I've read the abstract of it and it just looks amazing.
That's interesting.
Let me, as we're kind of winding down, ask. I have highlighted a lot of the trials that you have been through, and you have regaled us with how you stand up through it. But there's got to be some good that's come out of this. There's got I have found that people who stand, that other people who are like-minded find them. What has been the positive outcome for you that you would not have had if you caved to so many others?
Well, I've met people across the country who are kind of in the same fight, and we just we've been able to share our stories. That was good. I think that I've helped, I know that I've helped parents with some of their battles that aren't public. They're not on social media, but that they've dealt with at the schools. And I know that what I've done has helped and is right and is good. And I don't need to be patted on the back for that, but I know I did the right thing. I know that we put forth some good policies and a good foundation. It might not always be followed. Sometimes, you have rules and they're broken sometimes, but I think we've made good strides on getting a lot of the woke out and set a good foundation at the district that even if I'm not reelected, hopefully some of that will stay. I've met some amazing people. Me and you mentioned earlier, Vanessa Reed, we ran at the same time, and we were both kind of on the COVID, onslaught of how they were trying to tell us everything we could do. And sometimes I'd pick her up, and other times she'd pick me up, But I've seen her grow, and now she was just elected county commissioner, right? So
she is a different person entirely.
Yeah, and you grow from that. So I think you can use this experience to continue on. Not necessarily, it doesn't have to be in politics, anything, but just speaking out. I think I've become, better at that and sharing the message. And I've received emails from board members. I received one this past week from one in Wisconsin. And she actually says she's going to watch the board meeting on Monday because I said, get ready for some fireworks. It's usually pretty exciting, but for a school board meeting. But yeah, so I mean, and I work with the 1776 Project Pack too, to help board members across the country. We've got a Facebook group together to kind of share policies and help mentor them and help give them courage to put policies forward. And try to get those passed. So that's nice to help with them and get those wins and, just seeing the changes. Seen some things that have come forth from testifying, like at the State House, too, with legislation. And it helps. And then, you get the thank yous from some of the teachers or parents, and that means a lot. But basically, just seeing the changes I'm pretty proud of that we've made. We've really cleaned up a mess that was there before with different policies. And it's not to say it's not still happening on occasion, the things we've made policy for, but we've really helped eliminate a lot of the woke, at least in Lansing.
Well, I am so deeply appreciative of your work, of your labors, of your steadfastness. One more time, remind listeners where they can find you and connect with you.
Sure. You can find me on Facebook, Amy Cawvey, Cawvey. Well, you'll probably see that on here. I have X. It's Blondie AC1. Also, we have a new Facebook page for me and my running mates, the Lansing Lionesses, for USD 469. But you can contact me, through Facebook Messenger. I have my phone number listed on my Facebook, too. So you can always text me, call me, send me a message through Facebook, email, whichever. I have it all listed on there for the lovers and the haters.
Well, I hope some more lovers reach out to you.
Yeah.
Well, Amy, I'm proud of you, and thanks for coming on. This has been great. We could do this for another hour and a half. I know.
Went by quick.
But dinner time calls, right?
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, Amy and I have been coming to you today from the Herzog Foundation Studios in Smithville, Missouri. To learn more about the amazing work that Herzog team does to catalyze Christian education nationwide, go to herzogfoundation.com. To learn more about me or my work and connect, go to chasespears.com. Here on this podcast, I try to share stories and principles of courage, but it's up to you to put them into practice. It's up to you to find your spine. So get to it. I'm Chase Spears. Thanks for listening.
Remember to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'll see you next time on Finding Your Spine.